GM, I'm Rex, and this is your Beanstalk Farms Weekly Call Roundup. First off, a quick thank you to everyone that voted on BIP 34, BIP 35, and BOP 3. All three items reached quorum and passed, and we appreciate your support. As for calls, the first this week was Scribe's May 3rd update. Along with its ongoing services, the team is continuing to develop the Beanifesto, a comprehensive document that will be released on May 15th. On the call, the group discussed how to frame the state of the protocol to avoid confusion about its health and working state.
We should be talking about using language like it's stable, it's working, it's doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, but I would think like words more like using like resilient, battle-tested, things like that, you know?
Later in the call, the group discussed how the Basin project will take a different approach than its peers in solving a critical vulnerability faced by decentralized exchanges.
People building new protocols that require oracles because of this attack vector are shying away from using on-chain oracles and existing dexes, and are thus opting to use solutions like Chainlink that are not on-chain and less censorship resistant. And so the goal of Pumps/Basin is to have a totally censorship resistant and multi-block MEV resistant oracle that's on-chain.
The next day, the DAO held its weekly meeting and kicked off the discussion with a look at the near future.
So up next on the Mayflower front is Silo v3. An initial version of that is being audited at the moment. We're hoping to get Halborn a final commit hash within the next week or so. Had been asking a couple different community members for some input on how we should run the process for selecting the seed rewards for the unripe assets, which has been of much discussion over the last few months. Some people presented some interesting ideas around running it as like a few rounds of proposals. So think, one proposal that determines whether the seed reward should be the same for the two assets, another that would decide what the values actually are, and in that proposal, what the voting choices should be, whether it should be 0, 1, 2, or 0.51, 1.52 seeds per BDV, etc. So open to any suggestions there. So feel free to shoot me a note if you have any ideas there about what the best way to have the DAO collectively decide on what value should be in the ultimate Silo v3 BIP.
Beansama, who is a key resource in the development of the recent BIPs, talked the DAO through some of the improvements.
A lot of the changes that have been pushed basically enable the user to claim a certain asset, such as like rinsing sprouts, being able to harvest their pods, and also claiming silo deposits and like using those in like some sort of transactions, such as like buy fertilizer, as well as depositing into the silo, and then being able to also plant and being able to convert, withdraw, and like also transfer those planted assets as well. And yeah, I think, eventually we kind of want to go towards, being able to support as many possible combinations as we can, but I think this is like a pretty good first step.
Later in the meeting, Publius raised an important question that they had been considering recently. Should unripe assets receive stalk between replant and revitalization?
The question is whether or not holders of unripe deposits should be credited for the grown stock associated with the full BDV of the revitalized assets, even if the assets were not revitalized at the time that the seasons were passing. So it's a question of whether or not the grown stock should grow at a rate sort of after the fact in line with the fully revitalized value, or only the value at the time that the stock was grown.
A few minutes later, Silo Chad summarized the discussion, and Publius continued to provide insight.
Grown stock would be calculated now as the delta between season 6074 and whenever the deposit was made for unripe deposits, which caps the grown stock.
This would be after the change, yes.
And then effectively what you are doing is recapitalizing the base stock associated with the deposit, and that grown stock that occurred, that I guess you owned at the time of exploit, but no additional grown stock is being minted to the deposit.
Exactly. That is, kind of paints kind of the idea of where this is coming from, grown stock that farmers already had before the exploit should be revitalized, as that grown stock was lost and taken from them, but grown stock they were awarded after replant was not taken away from them in the same way that the pre-exploit grown stock was.
When this change happens, whatever stock you had grown from unripe after the exploit will be removed, yeah?
No. Any revitalized grown stock that has already been claimed will be left in place. So anyone who has enrooted, before the change is made will keep all their existing grown stock.
Make sure to listen to the DAO meeting recording in its entirety for more information. And that's all for this week. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you around the farm.